Hi there, my name's Anna and welcome back to my art channel. So in today's video we're working on a watercolor painting of a landscape and we're working on a poppy field. And as you can see, I've already kind of sketched out a few of the flowers and just some areas I want to mask off. Those I have masked with masking fluid. I let the masking fluid dry now and I'm wetting the background, I'm wetting the sky. You have to make sure that your brush is really clean. It wasn't in this case. Then I decided to go in with some blue and changed my mind again and decided to wet the entire background first before adding some more blue. And I want a kind of washed out effect. I want it darker at the top and becoming always lighter towards the bottom, towards the horizon line. So I make sure to add more paint to the top of the painting and then I kind of drag it down and it gets diluted by the water on the page. Sometimes I also clean off my brush first before I drag the paint down. And here you can see I'm using a lifting technique and the paint is still wet on the paper and I'm using a clean moist brush to lift off some of the paint, and that way I can create these rays of sunlight and the sun in the sky, and it gives a nice effect. This doesn't always work out perfectly, but I think it worked out quite well in this case. And now I'm starting to add some greens to the field of poppies, and further towards the top there's more yellow in the green, and the green is lighter because that's where the sun is hitting the strands of grass and plants. And further towards the foreground and the bottom between those plants you can see more shadow. I'm also dropping in some red for the far away out of focus poppies. That's just kind of blending into the green because the paint is still wet. And I'm just using a relatively large brush here to make sure that I'm working fairly loose and abstract. But with this larger brush I also can do fine detail actually, because it comes to a very fine point. So when I want fine detail I can use the same brush. Yeah, and to get a lighter green, as I said, I'd just add in some yellow to darken it up. I could use some blue to get it darker. Painting in some stems of the poppies now, some of the individual larger ones that are high above the field in this view. And also painting in some of the flower buds. And I'm back to adding some more shadow and detail between those plants and not being too exact. As you can see, I'm just kind of popping in color here, and it will look right when everything's finished. Back there you can see I've also added some capsules of the flowers that have already bloomed and lost their petals. So we have all three stages of poppies in this field. You can also dull down your green by using some red mixed into it. And possibly I might have even used some Payne's Grey. Now I let the paint dry entirely before I started peeling off the masking fluid, and I'm using my finger for this, but you have to be careful that your finger doesn't pick up any of the paint so you don't smear green onto those areas that you try to preserve. I'm using a light green color to paint in those stems that I had masked out. Painting in some of the flower buds that haven't opened yet over at those stems that I've already painted in. And I'm using a mixture of my Cotman, Windsor and Newton watercolors and my what do I call it, my Russian watercolors, the White Nights watercolors that I have here on the right. using some darker green now to paint the shade of those lighter stems that I had just painted in. And by the way, if you're enjoying this painting, do remember to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel for further content like this. And yeah, maybe even leave a nice comment if you like to. Now I'm starting to add some red to the white areas that I had preserved. And on some of these I want an effect of translucency, so I will layer the colors over each other. Right now you can see I'm just kind of letting warm yellow and red blend into each other as the paint is still wet, and this gives a nice effect as well. And just this gradient of color, and it looks very natural that way. But as the paint dries, I will be layering over some of these petals that I've already painted in, and doing so with a very light layer here, as you can see here. And it will kind of give the effect of the petals in the background kind of shining through, because these are really thin, translucent petals. Now I'm painting in some of those little magenta colored flowers with some magenta and purple mixes. I don't actually know what these flowers are. They were also not very large on the photo, so I guess I couldn't even see it in detail. And I'm using a warm red for these poppies mostly. And yeah, adding in some yellow at times. I think it was probably cadmium red hue probably. In any case, anything that looks close enough would be fine. I'm painting in the smaller poppies that don't have as much detail. They're further off in the distance. And I really enjoyed this painting. It wasn't overly hard to complete, and I just like the effect with the rays of sunlight and the red poppies. I do think poppies just look really nice, and I love the red colour. I'm adding some texture to some of the petals now, just by adding in little lines to indicate the folds that these really fine leaves, these really fine petals have. And I'm layering some more petals over each other. And I'm also adding the dark centers of the flowers, and you can see them through the petals because they are so thin. So most of these flowers will be shielding that center piece, but you can still see it. For most of these I'm just using, like I said, a warm red and a warm yellow, and just kind of blending them into each other. Some more detail to the center of the flowers, and now all that's really left is the final details, and I'm also going to be using some white gouache to add some little hairs to the stems of the flowers in some areas. Darkening up some last areas. I might have even added some black into that green in some areas just to get it really dark. Now here are the last final details, and that was it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon in one of my next videos. So take care and bye bye.